Morning and welcome to another Red9 demo. Today we're going to be going through the Red9 Control Builder, and this is probably one of the oldest tools within ProPack, and recently it's had quite a heavy uplift, so we thought it was worth a demo. It's found here, it's this little penknife on the shelf, or it's in the ProPack menus, just there, Control Builder. And it does exactly as it says. It builds controllers for rigging. It's not designed for complex rigging, it's designed to do simple rigging tasks and building controllers. There's three main options when we're building the controllers. If we have nothing selected, if we click the button, it will start loading the files in as they were saved. So they're saved down here. They're quite small when we save them out. We kind of save them at the same de facto sizes so that they're all relative to each other. You can add your own. You can literally build your own, select them like that, and just go export into a given library, and it will add them in if you want to build your own controllers. There is a limit to that. It has to be an FBX, which means it has to have a single shape. That's the only limit at the moment. We're going to look at that later on. But what I want to do for this time is I'm going to build a spine controller. I want to build it at this position here. I'm going to X-ray mode. So this is snap to selection, which means it will be snapped here. Inherit name, which means it will take that as the base name. It will take Spine02 as the base name for the controller. Group on creation, that's to get over the issue of having non-zero transforms. So we'll show you that and a way around that. So what it's done is it's built Spine02 controller, it's added a group, the group is snapped into the position of the joint, the controller is a child, therefore it has zero transforms, therefore as you're a rigger you want zero transforms when you build things. There is some new stuff that we put for the OffsetParentMatrix, and we'll do that at the end of this demo. Obviously the first thing is that, well, that controller's not in the right place. It is, but it's oriented the wrong way, and that's just because the CVs are in the wrong position. So what can we do about that? Well, this is the whole purpose, to enable really quick manipulation of CVs without having to get into selecting CVs and going into relative mode, and we can just move things around using these controllers. We'll get into these a little bit more in a minute when we build a different file. What I want to do is just the very basic stuff. Obviously we have colors. By default we have center, left and right within our rig, so we have red, blue and yellow. Obviously you can add your own control colors, etc. But that's an initial build. If we have multiple nodes selected, so we'll do that one and that one, it'll do the same thing, but it will do them for all of the selected objects. I'm not going to group them in this case, I'm just going to do that. Those are our three objects. Round they go, scale them up, maybe scale them back, done. Now then, we have a selection in here as well, but just to show you what we'd normally do is you then go to object mode, that to that parent, that to that parent. There's our spine set of controllers, and if we were making an FK spine, you would literally do that to that, orient, that to that, orient, that to that, orient. There we go. Now we've got a simple FK controller, and it's taken us next to nothing to build that hierarchy structure up. Dead easy. Remove that. You'll notice at the bottom we have world space relative and append, and this is all to do with swap shapes, and this is another really key aspect to this. Let's say we built our clavicle controller up there, and we'll just move it along the joints, and we'll maybe move it upwards. That'll do. Okay. So we've built this and we've carefully set everything up, and I'm just going to constrain the joint so we can make sure we've got the right one selected. Alright, so that should be in control of doing. Yes, it is. We've done that, and the animators have looked at that and go, I don't like that. I want it to be a curly set of arrows because that's what I'm used to in my old rigs. Not a problem. Bear in mind you might have added custom attributes to this, you might have wired it, you might have done all sorts of trendy, weird stuff to it. And what we want to do is replace that with a new shape. So we're going to make the new shape. Obviously the new shape snaps down into position of the old one. The old one has its pivot down here, which is why this one is built here. We come into that, we'll maybe do, oops, wrong one. We'll maybe do, in fact, I don't even need to do this because for what I'm doing, I want to show you the reason I can move things. Let's move that into position. Let's say that's the new shape that we want the clavicles to be. Okay, come out of that. So what we can do is we can select the new shape, we can select the, oops, didn't mean to do that, come out of scale, what am I doing in scale? Select the new one, select the old one, and what I want to do is I want to swap the shapes. So what we're going to do is we're physically going to swap, excuse me, these two shapes, sorry, this shape for these two shapes. Okay, so we select the new ones, we select the old ones, and we go swap. Now I'm going to do swap relative, just to show you the difference between the two. This controller has its pivot up here. This controller has its pivot down here. So what's going to happen is if we do it in relative space, it's going to pop back to where the old controller was, because we've done it relative to where it is, which is no use. What I want to do is I want to do it in world space, which does just that, and it compensates for an issue that there is in the latest build of Maya where the parent -s, one of the flags doesn't do what it used to do and things still pop. We've bypassed that by recoding all of that stuff. So that's really useful to be able to switch shapes. You can append to shapes. It might be that your animators said, I want that, but can we have a fancy little circle button thingy around the outside of that? I don't know why, and maybe they want that in a different color. So let's do that. We'll make that yellow. God only knows why. Maybe they want that for their controller. So what we'll do is we'll select the new one, select the old one that we're appending to, and we'll go append, delete that. That's now your control shape for that clavicle. So again, really useful to be able to switch stuff around, move them around. I'm going to switch files. We're going to go into a little bit more granularity on this thing. Okay, so this is a base Red9 puppet. This is as it comes off the back of the code, so it hasn't had everything aligned. It's literally as it comes off the back. Just to give you an idea of what we usually go through when we're building the rigs and how this is useful. So first thing I'm going to do is just select a few controllers, and we're just going to look at where they are, and we'll just whip them around. That's in the wrong place clearly. That's clearly facing the wrong direction. Right there. And obviously everything I'm doing here is manipulating the CVs. It's not doing anything to the transforms. You might want to go out there. You can see why now we've got increments left and right, because you can do one on one side, do one on the other side to make sure that things are in the correct positions on both sides. But the really useful stuff is some of the more complex stuff. So let's select the fingers. Let's toggle the fingers on, and we'll just select those. We'll come into them. Those are the fingers, and obviously on one side they're pointing in the right direction. On this side the axes are all inversed, and it's done them upside down. So again, it's quite an easy thing to do. What we're going to do is select all of them. That, by the way, is just because they're wired to our rig. It doesn't mean you have to do it. And the first thing that we can do is we can bypass stuff with a selection. So let's say we were trying to manipulate that CV around. We had stuff, in fact, it's not quite so obvious. Let's say we had these all selected, excuse me. Let's say we had these selected and we wanted to manipulate. You get into positions where if you're trying to select CVs, you end up doing kind of careful selections around stuff. I've still got soft select on, God knows why it keeps coming on. It does get quite annoying. So what you can do is select a single CV and just go select, and it will select all the CVs in that particular shape. That's a really useful thing to be able to do. The other thing is you'll notice we have a cache. So the first thing I'm going to do is just roll these into the right position, which is there. Again, it's all of them, so these are really useful. The default shape for that is this pin. Now, it might be that actually that's the wrong shape for this and we don't really like it, and what we want to do is put a pointy top on it. Again, I'm just kind of, messing around here, but let's say that's actually the shape we want for our finger controllers. Now, to replace all of these shapes with that new shape is actually quite a big task, because you've got to move them in the right place, snap them in the right place, or move the CVs, or etc, etc. But what we can do is we can cache that. I've only got this one selected, it's just these are children, so I've cached that shape. Everything else in this finger, they all share the same base shape, they share the same base topology, more importantly the same vert counts. And what that means is that I can go reset, and I can reset all of these, and what they'll do in relative space is inherit the shape of this. Bosh. One button. Really powerful, really useful for editing that kind of stuff en masse. Let's say we're doing FKs. FKs, we always build FKs so that they're on the joint base. But it might be that you want to move all your FKs down the arm. This is why this is really useful. We go 1, 2 on that one, select that, FK blender, and we'll go 1, 2 downwards. Again, really useful to just be able to knock things up and down in the right increments. Maybe the leg shape's the wrong, like we did with the other one. It might be that actually the leg shapes we want to be, let's do the same sort of thing. We'll move them out and we'll pin them back in there, and maybe they're a bit fatter on that side. I don't know, something like that, for example. And that's the shape we want for all the leg controllers, not the one we've got. Again, we can grab that, cache it, select all the other controllers that we want, and just add them in there, and it'll just replicate it instantly. It's in relative space, which is why that was pointing upwards, because it's relative to where it currently is. But again, really, really useful for modifying stuff like this. This cache, incidentally, is also vert aware. So if you've got controllers that are vert, or indeed if you want to use this for vert caching, which is very useful, you can do. So this object here, we've got just a little spear there, and what I can do, go to vert mode, actually I'm not, is I can cache that object. Now that caches this vert, all of the verts on this object. If we have multiple objects selected, it also caches the multiples because they're stored in a unit against the name of that transform if there's more than one. If there's only one, it doesn't bother storing the name because that means we can, like we did with the fingers, we can push them out. But I've cached it. So what it means is if I come in here and I go like that, and we'll maybe turn soft select back on, shift those up, we can just go, actually, I didn't mean to do that, and reset. And it's reset the verts we've got selected. So if we select all of it, it will reset everything. So again, really useful to be able to just reset cached objects. Like I say, that will work on multiples as well, which is very handy. Okay, that's about it for moving. Let's just go into this final part, and we'll do that on another scene. Okay, so we've switched files, and what we're going to do is just go through these three options here. Now, these are work in progress. In 2020, Mayer introduced the offset parent matrix, and what it is a secondary matrix that every object has. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build a very simple controller. In fact, yeah, we'll build a base clavicle. Let's just shift it into position, move that, bang it across, stick it up there somewhere. Okay, there's our base clavicle. Now, obviously, that's all well and good. It's in this space, and it has transforms because we didn't do the group. The issue is that obviously we want that clavicle to move around with the chest. Well, what we'd normally do is you select the chest, you'd select the object, and you'd build a parent constraint. Bang. Which means it does exactly what we want. The issue with that is that the transform now of this is locked by the constraint, which means it's no use for animation. That's usually why you would build the group. So usually you would do the group. If we did it on that side, oops, let's just turn that off. Did it on that side, we'll shift that down and up a bit, and we'll do the same thing on this one. But what we're going to do on that one is we'll select the joint, we'll select the group, and then we do the parent constraint, which means that's 0, it's open for animation, and we have a group node. That's still very valid, but what you can do is we can modify a few bits, and we can start using the offset parent matrix. The reason is the offset parent matrix is quicker. So first thing, we have transform nodes, and we said it's a secondary matrix. There's your transform matrix here in the transform attributes. Here's the offset parent matrix. Now this is a secondary matrix. So like I say, you've got the standard transform, and then you've got second matrix that comes in as well. So you can do some nifty things under the hood. First thing you can do is this object's in world space, and I can go freeze transforms. And what it's doing is it's copying a matrix from here down to this. And what that does is it leaves our channel box with zeros because we've piped it into this secondary matrix. We've frozen the node in world space, which is a really handy thing to be able to do. We started doing this quite a lot on rigs to stop having secondary groups above it. But you can push that data back. So we can push it to and from. We can push it from here into the offset parent and back again. So we can push that across to and from, which is quite handy. The other thing that we can do is, like we said with the other one, is we need to move this with the chest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go that, and I'm going to go that, and I'm going to go constraint. Now, like I say, we could do a parent constraint on this. We could build a secondary group object and constrain the group. But what we can do is we can do a offset parent matrix constraint. Bang. Now then, what that's done is this object still has our 0 transforms, still moves with the chest, and yet has only one connection in. So there's the chest world matrix going into the offset parent matrix of the controller. We've done a bit of modification. So again, this is still kind of in testing. The first thing we do is we turn off the inherit transform, and what that's doing is that is effectively killing this parent transform, or rather it's killing the parents of that transform. One of the issues with the offset parent matrix is if you make a group and we snap the group into place, that to that, where are we, that, snap, group, and we'll parent that. Okay, so we've parented that under this group. This group has some transforms. If I were to move that around, obviously this node moves, which it should do. But if I turn, hang on a second, what am I doing? I've done that one. It's the other way around. I'm doing it the wrong way around, excuse me. There we go, that's what happens. So by default, we turn the inherit transforms off, and it's for this reason. That's what happens if you've got transforms above the node that you're doing. So it's because the two matrices are applying on top of each other. You've got a parent matrix which is saying one thing, you've got a new input world matrix saying something different, and you get this horrible offsetting going on. So to compensate that, we turn off inherit transforms. There are other ways of doing it. I've just moved it out of the way. Let's just move that out of the way. But that's how we do it. We do it by turning this inherit off, which just helps. Like I say, it's in testing at the moment. The other thing that we do is we put a warning to say you can't do it for joints. So if we have, we can constrain nodes to joints, but we can't constrain joints to nodes because we've stopped it. You'll get a big warning to say, bang, it does. Oh, maybe I've taken that warning off. It shouldn't do. We've had a look at it with joints, and sometimes you get into issues with the joint orients. Still in progress, but it's worth noting, and that will be getting developed more and more recently. These two are rock solid. We use those all the time in the rigging. This one we're still testing and we're still unsure about. Right, hopefully that gives you a good insight into the control builder. Go away and grab it, dig into it. We're using it all the time, and it will just gradually get more and more use as we go along. One last thing that we didn't mention actually is that if I load the rig back up, is in the selection there is a control modifier. So if we see these CVs, this controller actually has an awful lot of different control shapes in it. If we were to select, we select everything, but what happens if we just want to move this ring? Well, this ring is a separate shape. If we go control select, it selects just that particular shape that CV is attached to. Forgot about that. Okay, thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like the channel, go and grab ProPack, it's on the website. There's trials, subscriptions, all of that sort of stuff. Thanks very much. Hopefully see you again. Bye.